So welcome everybody. It's our April meeting. I'll get us real quickly because we can get to the meat of this, but some calendar things coming up. First of all, we're going to do tonight is the Yellowstone trip from 2024, the review, which tonight is Zoom only. We're not having meetings at the library anymore. The other thing that's going to come up is May 1st. So everybody needs to pay attention. If you're interested in the Yellowstone trip, the sign up is going to be May 1st, and we're going to change some of the process on that, and we'll get to that in a minute. May 21st, we're going to have a contest for with a black and white theme, and the person who gave the presentation last month, Jennifer King, is going to be our judge. So if you didn't see her presentation, you should watch it and then start getting your black and white ready. Probably the deadline for entry will be somewhere about the 16th or 17th, but we'll get all the details out to you on the next snapshot. And then in June, we're going to have a field event, which is going to be printing at Kathy Aronson's house. And we'll also get the details about how you get in on that. And again, we don't have the date established, but we're going to try to do the scavenger hunt in July. But anyhow, so that's kind of upcoming. The key thing is, if you're interested in the 2025 Yellowstone trip, you should really be paying attention. Tomorrow, there's going to be an email with the details on how you sign up. And then on May 1st, you get to try to sign up. So we'll get to some of those details here in just a minute. Which is right now. So the trip next year is February 6th through 12th. And anyhow, Barney, did you want to say anything as you're going to be one of the trip leaders?
Yeah, I'm happy to do it. We had a discussion about the fairness of sign up and just doing it by an email stamp. And of course, depending upon where you are in the country and what server you have, the time that the email can arrive at Michael's location, for example, can vary by many minutes, even if they're sent from the same location, but with different servers. So to make this more fair this year, we're going to open up the window for submissions for an hour, and then it's going to go through a randomization process as to who gets selected. So it'll all be done. Michael Cohen's going to handle all of that, and already has some algorithms in place to generate random numbers for people that want to go on the trip. So that's how it's going to be handled, and then those individuals and your alternate number will be sent to you later in that day. So that's the big deal. The cost of the trip is $29.95, and all inclusive as was before. We leave on Wednesday the 6th. I think that's a Wednesday or Thursday. I can't remember. Anyway, the 6th through the 12th. And up to West Yellowstone. That'll be the starting point. We're going to try and do an overnight inside the park at the Snow Lodge. That's going to be somewhat dependent upon the snow coach and what is allowed. Of course, last year that wasn't allowed. And then on up to Gardner and do our usual trips back and forth to Cook City. So it should be another exciting trip, and let's hope we get some cold weather and lots of snow.
Great, thanks, Barney. Okay. So also, again, I'll just repeat myself again, but May 1st, we're going to send out the guidelines in the May snapshot for the black and white contest. And then I think May 16th is going to be the deadline for entry. So keep those in mind. And then I think that may be everything. We may turn it right over. Yeah. So tonight's the Yellowstone trip. I'm going to turn it over to Rachel and let her explain everything that they saw and they did.
Okay, thanks, David. Can everyone hear me well enough?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, great. All right. So I think, let me see, start that. Is that showing the,
Yeah, that looks like you've got full screen Yellowstone in winter.
okay, perfect. So, thanks everybody for joining us. So this is a review and we're kind of, it's a little bit of a humble brag, I suppose, really, because, because 8 of us were extremely lucky to go to Yellowstone earlier this year in January, in fact. And we happened to be there the day that an event happened that you probably will see once in a lifetime. And our incredible guide who was with us tonight, Kenny, you're on, aren't you? I think I saw Kenny was here. Kenny Jones was our guide. And we saw some incredible things that the Wapiti
Yeah, we
Park.
had a Zoom meeting with the Teton Photography Club.
Who's that? Is that Kenny or someone else? Anyway, thanks Kenny for being here. So on the trip, there was a bunch of us and some of us are here tonight and we wanted to show some of the photos that we took and tell you about our experience, particularly given that next week there's going to be a call out for next year's trip. So let me just go to the next slide. So this is us.
Rachel, I don't see the full image. I'm seeing all the slides at once.
Oh, okay. Mike,
you
sorry,
go.
David said there was the full slides. So there we go. Is that the full image?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Hi, Rich. I made it.
Oh, hi, Karen. Thanks. All right. So as David mentioned just before, this is the trip next year, 2025, will be the same price. Emails will be sent about that on May the 1st. The way that it's going to happen this year is a little bit different in terms of how you get on the trip, but you need to be prepared to send an email at the time that this comes out because this trip fills up in minutes, literally. So this year in 2024, we had 8 people. On this call tonight is Tish. I think she's here. Karen is here. Cindy is here. Jim is here. This is me. Oh, there's Jim. Michael might be joining us later, and this is VC, and I'm not sure if she's here or not. And then Kenny was our driver who's on. And so here's a little snapshot of some of the things we did. Somehow beer got in here somewhere. I don't know how that happened. And I thought this was a photo I took while we were at one of the hotels somewhere. And you may remember this was how bears used to be greeted in the park back in the 70s. Before the Craighead brothers got involved in regulating the way bears were fed in the park. They would just walk up to your car and you'd feed them biscuits. But of course, everyone here knows not to do that, right? Now. And this is kind of the scene in winter. If you haven't been to Yellowstone in winter, it's a completely different place. It's quieter. There are many fewer people. The landscapes are completely different. They're ethereal in the way they look. We don't have a lot of photos tonight from thermal features because we did end up concentrating a fair bit on wildlife, but it's a special, special place in the winter. And I highly recommend you go if you have an opportunity. Even if you just have an opportunity to go for a half day or a day, you can take tours in and out of West Yellowstone. Kenny, who's on the call tonight, can probably help you with that. And it's an absolutely different place. There are snowmobiles, but they are now 4-stroke instead of 2-stroke, so they're much quieter than they were. And they limit the number of people and the number of snowmobiles that can be in the park. So it's a really special place. So go to my next slide if it's going to go. So we started our trip in January, and here's a picture of us on our way there. This is from Cindy. Karen is driving the car here, so off we go over Teton Pass to West Yellowstone. Until the pass was closed. So we were all ready to go until the pass was closed. And of course, this can happen in winter when, you know, you just get big snow falls up there. So we ended up departing Jackson a little bit late, but we did make it all the way to Island Park, where we stopped to have a break and to look at the trumpeter swans. And this is a photo from Nancy. This is a beautiful photo of trumpeter swans on the river at Island Park taking off. So when you talk to people about what they want to see in Yellowstone, particularly in the winter, and Kenny would probably is familiar with this, there's a lot of things you want to see. So, you know, we asked people on the trip, because the way this trip works, by the way, is because it's a bespoke trip and it's just us in the snow coach, then you can really go and do whatever you want. So as long as everyone else agrees, you know, if you say, I want to find wolves today, or I want to find a bobcat today, that can happen. So there's lots of things to see. Obviously, there's trumpeter swans, and, you know, I've never seen a wolverine anywhere, let alone Yellowstone. But, you know, there's no harm in asking Kenny if he can find us a wolverine. The time we were in there was a bobcat around, and it had been seen down by the river. It's always good to see an ermine or a weasel, but lots and lots of people want to see the wolves, right? We all want to see the wolves. So we saw lots of these species while we were there. And so I want to show you some of the photos that we took while we were there. And so first of all, Jim, who's on this call tonight, here's some of his photos. And Jim, do you want to talk about your experience?
Well, this shot here, our experience is we've never been to Yellowstone in the winter before. We were volunteers in the park last year and the year before that at the National Elk Refuge, and we flew in a little early so we could take the sleigh ride out and try and get some shots of the elk right there in Jackson before we met up with you guys, and we got delayed by the weather and all that. But anyway, we had a fantastic time. It was beyond our expectations. This picture of the eagle on the left was flying up the river while we were all standing there. He went back and forth probably 3 or 4 times that day. And you just had to this was a lucky shot where I had the camera in my hand and somebody hollered eagle, and I got it. The other one was taken down by the river when you entering Gardner there and head towards what was it, the other end of that road. But anyway, yeah, it was a fantastic time. I mean, for us, we're 2,500 miles away, so this was a once in a lifetime trip for us, we think, as much as we love to go again. But so this was at a campground, a Forest Service campground, I think, just as you were getting to Gardner, where we
interesting
shot.
that there's barely any, well, there's no snow in this photo, Jim. That's interesting.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of snow.
There wasn't a lot of snow once we got on the way in there. So this here, you know, the Rangers can be kind of tough. And this was our first night. We were headed back to the hotel in Gardner, and we came up on this herd of pronghorn, and there was a lot of them. And all of a sudden, we were taking some pictures of it, and the whole herd took off at full speed, except for these 2 guys. They probably had been pulled over before, and they had to go through slowly so they wouldn't get another ticket. So I thought it was a cool sign. Yeah, this one's mine too. This was at where we first stopped at the top of the hill, and I like the background to it, where the snow was up on the ridge in patches. So
We weren't expecting to see pronghorns.
yeah, and I think Karen has a similar picture to this. These guys were walking up the road later in the day when we were at the river there watching the bison and the wolves. And they made all of a sudden somebody said, "Everybody back to the your vehicles, and these guys were tromping down the road. But I was one of the ones that like, okay, in a second. This is a photo close up from the Discovery Center back in West Yellowstone, where we went over there for a morning. That was a lot of fun before we left for the afternoon. And this one's in, this is a color one, believe it or not. And I also did it in black and white. I wasn't too successful shooting through the glass in the buildings, but when you got up to the fence, like I did on this one, and crank the f-stop wide open, you were able to get it through the fence.
So for people that don't know, in West Yellowstone, Montana, there is a wolf and grizzly discovery center, and they take in a lot of grizzlies that have been rescued because they've become habituated, so they would otherwise be euthanized. And they have, I don't know, 10 or maybe 10 grizzlies there that they have in very large enclosures, and they rotate them around so that they come out and look for food, and then they sort of go back into their enclosures. And so they're very well looked after, and it's a rescue organization, and it's a not-for-profit as well. So in terms of ethical treatment of animals, they have a very high standard, unlike some, animal farms. This is not a farm, it's a rescue center. And so they do have some wolves, and they have rescued grizzlies. So it's really worth a visit in West Yellowstone. So Nancy, would you like to talk us through your photos?
Sure. This was once we got to Gardner after the day we spent with the wolves and the bison. And I've never been to Yellowstone in winter either. And the landscape is so different. It just struck me as so beautiful and ethereal. And I just stood there and waited for these bison to separate and get into the perfect little formation for me. So this is in the Lamar Valley. And that's that same eagle that Jim shot that was flying over us. I live up in Washington State, about 60 miles north of Seattle, and we get hundreds of eagles all winter long. So I have a lot of practice shooting pictures of eagles, and they don't excite me as much as they do some people, but to me, when the day that we were shooting the wolves, it was really interesting to watch the other wildlife, because what happened was we watched the wolves, but all these ravens flew in and the eagle flew in, and it was like a coyote came down. All the animals knew what was going on, and they were kind of waiting, and these ravens were up in this tree. So I just looked away from the wolves for a minute for that. On our last day in Gardner, we came across these bison drinking water it was surprisingly warm. There was water available for them, which I understand is pretty unusual. And so we sat down on the road and got some close-ups. Long lens. This was one of my favorite locations. There were this big stand of willows, and I saw later that other people got moose in the willows, had walked out, but these bison were right there. The colors were just so beautiful to me.
Mm.
This is from that Grizzly Discovery Center in West Yellowstone. Those bears were really fun. Little bear yoga going on there. And she's got a piece of food in one hand. When you can kind of see it there. She's got food there.
Very cute.
I just threw these in because we did spend the last morning doing some landscape photos, and if you've been to the thermals in the summer, it's just completely different in winter. It's such a stark and interesting landscape. So I just threw in a couple of those. I think there's another one. Yeah. Oh yeah. When we were desperately looking for wildlife before we had seen the wolves, I think this was before, or was it the first day in Gardner? I can't remember. I saw a couple of elk up on this hill, and it was really gray sky. It was really sort of stark. And so I switched this to a black and white sepia kind of, just because that was the mood I felt there. But a lot of the pictures, it's funny because it's at such an angle. They're standing in a funny angle.
I took this picture too, and I played around with it, and I gave it a little bit of a light blue background with a red sunrise. It was pretty cool looking. I thought I wouldn't put it in though to the list because it was a little
I
overdone.
just the colors, the bison in the winter, they just like, what did you say, Rachel? They look like they've been to the spa. They're
Yeah, they looked so healthy, and their fur was so good.
it's silky, and next to the sage, I just love the colors. It's so different from what I'm used to. There's another landscape.
That's nice.
That's
This
from
is
Mammoth,
from
right?
Mammoth Hot Springs, right?
Yeah, that's Mammoth in the winter. Just unbelievable.
Yeah. No,
That's
picture-
And we were the
That
only
was-
people there. I think a couple other people walked up, but if you've ever been in there in the summer, to see it with no people is just mind blowing.
Yeah, so I think this is kind of a quintessential image of Yellowstone. I really love this photo from Cindy because the snowy bison is really what you want to see when you go to Yellowstone in winter. So Cindy, do you want to talk us through some of your images?
I think this was the first day. I think we were on the snow coach, and it was snowing
that's
like
right.
that.
Yeah.
And I just, you're used to seeing the snowy bison face. Well, this is the total snowy bison. I really like that picture. This is, I think it was called Soda Butte, where this is where you shot that other, the bison from the road, Nancy.
It is.
And I love the curve of the river and the bison and the reflections. And this, I think, was also the first day. I have this one up on my wall. I love coyotes. I like wolves. I love wolves too, but I love coyotes. And this guy was just sneaking. This was at the Wolf and Grizzly Discovery Center. These two wolves were separate from the other pack of wolves, and they were just sitting there. And this one of
Waiting
them
to
just
be
kind of
fed.
looked over at me, and I got a shot.
I got the same shot, only the other one's looking at me and the other one's looking the other
Yeah.
straight. But I think they were waiting to eat.
Oh, okay.
Oh, just some more pronghorns. I love pronghorns. And this is at the same campground, the bighorns at the campground. Yeah, it looks weird with no snow.
So Karen, are you here? Can you talk about your images?
Yes, I am here.
Awesome.
So this was obviously taken at the Grizzly and Wolf Discovery Center, and our trip next year will include a morning also at the center. We always do that, and it's a really fun thing. And obviously on this image I cleaned up and whitened the background. He was laying on snow, so I just decided to make it completely white, and I just thought it was a really cute pose.
It was like he's on cloud nine.
Yeah, and that's the same coyote
I
as
think
you
so. Yep.
Yeah.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, that was actually very far away. And this was the image of the bison coming down the road when we were standing there. I don't know if before I got online, Rachel, did you spend some time explaining about that incredible?
Oh, we're not up to the wolves yet. So what I've done is I've put everybody's photos from
Okay.
wolves, and then wolves are going to be all together as a group. So we haven't shown photos yet.
So when Rachel gets to the wolves, just in mind, I thought when I saw these group of bison coming forward, that they were coming to save their buddy. But no, they just marched right on by and left him to his fate. But it was a cool moment.
I think they glanced over and said, nah.
And this is pretty much Lamar. This is Lamar Valley in northern Yellowstone in the winter. It's this vast, snowy interior. And what I tried to capture in this image was something of that vastness with these two bison far out in the distance.
That's beautiful. So I don't know, is Michael online? Michael, are you here?
No,
He's not here. Okay. So I'll go through some of Michael's photos just quickly, but he does a technique called intentional camera movement, which he experimented with in some of the thermal features. And so this is one of the thermal hot pools, and he's opened the shutter for several seconds and deliberately moved the camera in a specific way to create this abstract image, which I think is really beautiful and really interesting and different to what you'd normally see. So here is this is a couple of the bears from the Wolf and Grizzly Discovery Center. And these two, I think, are siblings, and they were just messing around and fighting with each other. Michael is really talented at shooting landscapes, and I think this particular shot was very early. The sun hadn't risen yet, and we stopped in a pullout, and he had to walk quite a long distance up a hill to get this shot, but I think it was worth it. And again, this is sort of what Karen was talking about with the vastness of Lamar Valley in the winter. And you know, when you get a blizzard in these kind of situations, you just get these bison putting their head down and just marching through. And it's just so beautiful. And here's a portrait of Michael's of a bison's. We did see this coyote. We were driving through Little America at one point, and this coyote crossed the road a couple of times in front of us, and it sort of looks like it was maybe pregnant or just a bit fat. I don't know. But anyway, very handsome looking coyote. And here's a really nice shot of Michael's. And again, this is one of his shots of intentional camera movement, which I think is really interesting. And then here we go. This is when it started to snow in Lamar, and you get these really beautiful images where, you know, you can get very foggy, hazy kind of images of Lamar. So many opportunities for the landscape. But let's cut to the chase then, because out of all these words I showed you from the word cloud, so far we've only seen the wolves at the Wolf and Discovery Center. But let me tell you a story about what happened to us that day. So some of you may have heard about this or seen it on social media, because it was a huge thing. So we left in the morning. Our Kenny, who's on this call, he is our guide, and he had heard. Now, Kenny, you may want to share with us, you'd heard on the grapevine the day before that the Wapiti Lake Pack were in the area. Is that right?
That's correct. We had been over to Hayden Valley, and we came back at Madison Junction, and I was talking to one of the rangers, and he said that, hey, the Wapitis were down at Mary Mountain just a little while ago. And so we had about an hour before we had to get out of the park. So I talked to Michael and I think Karen, and I says, hey, let's just take a drive down there real quick, see what we can see, but we got to be out by 5. And so we proceed down there, and along the Firehole River, you know, a bunch of people were set up and had a spotting scope. And naturally, that was instinct to stop and inquire as to what was going on. And they had spotted the bobcat along on the other side of the bank. So, you know, we spent a little bit of time there, and time was kind of passing by pretty quick. So we left the park. And the next morning, we got in early and went back to the exact same location. And we come around the corner, and we were the second coach. And right there is what we seen as we come around the corner.
And can I just say, Kenny was really sneaky because he didn't tell us. We all thought we were looking for bobcats. And there are these two wolves in the road, and I was in the front of the bus, and Carmen was in the back, and Carmen was going, "What is it? What is it?" I'm like, "Get out!" It was just a thrilling moment to see these wolves in the road in front of us.
So,
Yes.
so before I show you the photos and we go on, I just want to give everyone a little bit of an overview of the wolves in Yellowstone in case you don't know. So, every year the Yellowstone National Park Wolf Project releases an annual report of the number of wolves in the park and how many packs there are, and they try to monitor how many pups have been born and how those packs have formed and broken up and moved around. So the latest report was published in 2023, but it is on the status in 2022. But they've updated that now to say that as of January this year, there's at least 124 wolves in Yellowstone in 10 packs. And these are the packs you can see here. So the pack we're going to show you today in our photos is the Wapiti Lake pack, and this is their territory here. And I thought this was interesting because, you know, this whole experience for me, and other people can speak to this, it changed my opinion of wolves a lot because we spent 8.5 hours watching them. And I always thought that, you know, I was always told they were vicious animals and they would attack you and they would stalk you and they would kill you. And so it's interesting to know that there have been no cases recorded of people being injured by wolves in Yellowstone. But 2 wolves have had to have been euthanized because they've become habituated. And it's thought that's been through people feeding them. So obviously that's bad for all animals, and particularly this has resulted in the death of 2. And a lot more wolves have died as a result of hunting, because outside of the Yellowstone National Park, wolves can be hunted. And so wolves can't read maps. And so if they leave the border of the park and go into the northern range or outside the border, they can be hunted and killed. So that's what it says here, is that 19% of wolves living in the Yellowstone National Park area were harvested during the hunting season of 2020 to 2022. Did you want to say something, Kenny?
Oh, no. We did lose 3 wolves just within the past couple weeks in the northern range, just outside the park. And that's still being kind of investigated. But yeah, wolves are prey. And, you know, we've seen some devastating news, Sublette County. And I think there was another wolf that we'd lost that had wandered outside the park as well. So.
Yeah. So the Wapiti Lake pack, which is the pack that we are going to show you the photos of, they were formed in 2014. And then in 2022, according to this report, there was some major changes that happened to them. Some of them were illegally trapped and killed. They were formed by an alpha male called 755M. He was named by biologists. And and so they, for a while, had an alpha female. But I don't know if Kenny, if you know who the alpha is anymore. And on the day that we were there, Karen thought she took a photo of the alpha, but I'm not sure if we know if that's true anymore.
The alpha is a gray one, and during a lot of the activity there along the river, she was up on top of the hill, and she did come down a couple times.
Yeah, so she may be this wolf here. Would that be her?
I think she's a little bit more gray, solid gray.
Okay. So in any case, let me just set the scene a little bit. So Kenny started setting the scene by saying we came around the corner, there was these 2 wolves in the road. We all got out of the vehicle because we saw these 2 wolves in the road here. And then as we walked along the road and looked on the river, we saw there was wolves down by the river. And this was what we saw. And Nancy, do you want to talk us through this photo that you took and the nickname that you've given this wolf?
So funny story. So this is one of the wolves that was in the road. And once we realized that they were crossing the river, we all kind of went down by the river and looked up, and the wolves were looking at us. And I had a little, like, I'm not comfortable in snow, and I kind of fell over and was struggling, and this wolf was looking at me like, lunch. But we nicknamed this wolf Spiky, and that name spread on social media, so I don't know. This photo has been cleaned up because I printed it and had it in a show, and I named it Those Eyes, because that's all we could talk about was the feeling of those eyes looking at us. And I know everybody had that same response.
Oh yeah. And so here's Spiky again, I think.
I think that's the other one. I think this is the wolf I called the chief biter. So it's a little bit lighter than Spiky, and this is the one when the bison was getting worn down that would run in and attack it.
So here's just a short video so I can set the scene for everyone. So I think, Kenny, there's not really any phone communication in this particular spot. Is that right?
That's correct.
So this was where we were. And I think by the end of the day, the entire population of the park in winter was at this spot. But initially, when you see something like this, you want to text your friends or call them and say, hey, get here. But the interesting thing about Yellowstone is there's a lot of dead spots for cell phones. There's also, you can't just drive into the park in winter. You have to be on a tour, in a snow coach or on a snowmobile. So once we were there, you can't just bring other people in. So there weren't that many people there really. But what I wanted to point out too from this is that this is where this was happening. So this is the Firehole River, and we were all standing here with the permission of a ranger. I want to emphasize that. There was a ranger there the whole time. This is probably a little bit less than 100 yards from the action, but the ranger completely supervised us and made sure that nobody did anything silly. And everyone was pretty well behaved, I would say. So this was the scene that we saw. So Nancy, do you want to talk us through this image?
So I haven't posted this image anywhere, and Karin, I know this, you don't like to see this, I'm sorry, but this is getting really late in the day when the bison is getting really, really worn down. And this, every time it would go down, the wolves would come in and try and grab a piece of it. It was wounded from the morning, but they never like jumped on it the way you see, it wasn't like this wolf pack jumping on it or anything. They just wore it down. And I just got this, he got a piece. The bison just got up and went after him again after that, though. I mean, and you can see by that, I believe that's Spiky, or I don't know if that's Spiky in the middle, but the one on the left, you can see they're scared of the bison. They know that bison can really do some damage. So they would come in, but they were very timid most of the time.
And I think the interesting thing about it too was that someone pointed out, and it might have been Kenny, that they were so risk adverse about this confrontation because one kick from this bison, which probably weighs 1,500 pounds or something, could injure them fatally or, chronically. So Kenny, do you want to comment on how risk adverse they were?
Yeah, they definitely at risk. And if they get, and how they work is they try to distract the front of the bison and get around back and get into the hind legs and ground the bison. But the bison, they'll hook them just like a tourist and fling them up in the air with their horns. So a bison can be very defensive and can kind of hold their own. The bison in this particular case, I think he was older and worn down to begin with, and just throughout the day, they just kind of wore him down to the point that it was purely exhausted.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing too is these, as you can see from the photos I'm flicking through, it's mostly the pups that did all of the harassing.
Had a kid, or did you make this, or?
What was that?
Sorry.
Sorry, does somebody have a question?
I think they just unmuted for a second.
Oh, okay. So as you can see, you know, from these photos, as I flick through them, that it was the small black that looked like pups that did most of the kind of harassing of this bison. And so when we turned up in the morning, which was, I don't know, 8 o'clock in the morning, we were there for the day. We didn't leave until we had to get out of the park. We sat there for 8.5 hours with everybody else, watched this play out. And it was really just these pups or yearlings or however old they would be. I don't know if anyone knows, that would just, as soon as the bison would want to sit down or rest, they would just come and nip at it and nip at it and nip at it until it just got really exhausted.
I thought it was very interesting that they would take turns, like being on guard. That the wolves would come down and sit down and watch the bison, and if he got out of the water or if he tried to lay down, he got up and kind of went over and harassed him until he got up again. The bison got up again.
There were a couple of times too when it seemed like it was almost like a cartoon where like the bison decided to rest and the wolves had rested too. Like they were all exhausted. It was very strange.
Yeah, there were several times where all of a sudden, 3 or 4 or 5 wolves came out at the same time, and we all thought, well, here we go.
Oh
This
yeah.
is it.
Yeah, this is it. And then they all went back and lied down again.
Yeah, so like this photo here, so you can see here, this is Michael's photo. You can see here comes one of the adults, and I don't know where they sit in the pack, whether they're alpha or not, but they also, so that up at the top of this photo, there's a little hill. And so the adults and the alpha would sit up there and just relax and sleep, while these 4 black ones would come up and down and just harass this bison. And then they'd rest and the bison would rest, and then they'd start again. And then the adults would come down and just see what was happening. But they didn't ever attack it in terms of trying to grab its throat or anything like that. And during this whole process, although it sort of seemed cruel, I mean, it's just part of nature, I suppose, but we also saw some really beautiful moments between the wolves. So Karen, do you want to talk about this shot here?
Yeah, I think that I have heard on social media that wolf on the left might have been the alpha. And you would see at times that some of the younger wolves would go up and fawn over that wolf on the left. And that's what I think that is. And what Rachel was referring to, that image that if you flash back to that image of Michael's, what I remember very clearly is it was pretty late in the day. And every time, as Rachel said, every time the bison would lay down to rest, the wolves would force it up again by nipping at it. And a couple of times he'd try to go stand in the river to get away from them. And then he would get very cold and eventually have to come out again. And there came a moment very late in the afternoon when they came to nip at him from sitting down, and he did not get up. He was obviously reaching the end of his rope and he didn't stand up. And that was the point where all of a sudden the youngsters disappeared. And it was clear, it was almost like they all ran up to the top of the hill to call the adults and say, okay, that's it. We've done a good job. He can't get up. Everybody come on down now. And there was just the bison there for like maybe 5 minutes, no wolves. And then they all came down the hill together. It was almost like a movie. I could almost hear the soundtrack. Dun, 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 and they all came down from the top of the hill.
Yeah.
And surprise, he actually managed to stand up again. And I almost felt like the adults were saying to the kids, what the heck did you bother us for? We were napping and you disturbed us. What's wrong with you children? Anyway.
Oh, here's one of them napping now.
Yeah. Yeah, like why'd you bother us, right? So that was, even though it seemed like that might be the end, it was not the end. And at some point in time, I found it deeply disturbing. I felt, we all knew what the end outcome would be, and I just went to go sit on the snow coach. I just couldn't watch it anymore. I know it's nature, and I know, the ending was already written before it happened. And I know that the bison knew it. And I guess I was empathizing with that bison so much that at some point I had to go and sit on the snow coach and stop watching.
Do you want to comment on this photo, Cindy? Because I think this is kind of what you described just then, Karen, that, one of these might be an alpha. And there was moments between those wolves in the 8.5 hours that we were there that there was some really beautiful moments between them, obviously just reassuring each other that, or reaffirming that they're part of this pack and things like that happened between the adults.
This was like towards the end of the time we were there, when the light colored ones came down, and I thought they were the most beautiful. And then one of them was kissing I call this one kissing wolves. And I just thought it was so touching. And they're just so beautiful.
Yeah, Cindy, this is Barney. I've been fortunate enough to kind of be on a kill in Yellowstone and in the wintertime as well. And the images that I actually have kept are images like this. I mean, the interaction between the wolves,
Yeah.
the affection that they show each other is just I just love it. I just love it. I have a couple of pictures of them chewing on the bones and all the rest of that stuff, but the real keepers for me are images like this. So they showing the interaction of between the wolves or the individual actions of the wolves.
Yeah,
Well
that is the one that I actually have printed on my wall of the 3 wolves.
Excellent. Yeah.
That one with the mouth open, I'm pretty sure he was yawning. He just got up.
This one, this is Jim's.
Yeah, this one. I think he's yawning. His eyes are closed. It was his turn to get to go rest, or he just got done resting. Because I got another one where they are really growling at and it's a different look. Look at the hair sticking up on the top and everything.
Could be Spiky Jr.
Yeah, let me just find that one of Michael's that
It knew to the word the hackles rose on my neck watching these guys.
What was that, Karen?
Well, the phrase, the hackles on the back of my neck rose. And that's this is. I mean, it is that. These are their hackles, and they are up.
Yeah. And this is the look you're talking about, Jim, right? Where this wolf is really trying to intimidate this bison. I don't know. This is different to the yawn you were just talking about. But then, there are moments like this where they're just standing looking down the lens, and they're such beautiful animals. And like you were saying, Nancy, the eyes have it with these wolves. They were just so stunning to look at. But I mean, I think what surprised me about this whole, and it was absolutely incredible experience, and thank you to Kenny on this call, who's on this call, for leading us here, because I don't think I'll ever see something like this again. The thing that surprised me was, that the pups did all the work. I wasn't aware that, they would work as a team like they did. And like other people have said, they sort of would rest and then get up again and rest and get up again. The outcome of this, we weren't there for, by the way, but you can probably guess what happened. Or maybe you can't, because actually what we heard happened was during the night, the bison drowned in the river. So we were there for 2 days with Kenny on the snow coach, and the second day we weren't in the park in the snow coach, so we couldn't get to this area because, as I said, you can't just drive in in the winter you have to be on a tour. But people reported that the bison drowned overnight in the river, and it floated down the river a little bit, and then the wolves came and fed on it, and other critters fed on it. So they did not actually kill it. Kenny, is that what you know?
Yeah, the ranger said the next morning that the bison, just from pure exhaustion, laid down in the river and drowned. So it kind of saved that pain of going through that process. And it did float down maybe about 75 feet from the location where it's at. And for the next 2 or 3 days, it was actually in the middle of the river where they were eating on it. And then they drug it up on the far shore and finished eating the bison. So the remains was up on the far shore in its final resting spot. And probably about 6 days afterwards, of course, the ravens and everything else was taking their turn on it. But in the final outcome, I put a little short movie there in the notes or in the messaging.
Oh yeah.
There's a coyote.
Yeah.
Nothing goes to waste. And the coyote separated the hide from the skeletal remains and drug the hide off. So I have to assume that the coyote was taking that back to its den.
Hmm.
So kind of an interesting, I've never seen that happen.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna see if I can play this movie. I'm just downloading it. Were you there for that, Kenny? Was that the following day?
That was probably about 6 days after the bison passed.
Okay.
The next morning, there was nothing but the rib cage and like the head, right?
Right, right.
And we were speculating it would have lasted longer, but
Yeah. They, in just roughly a matter of 12
Wow.
hours or so,
Huh.
they'll devour a full bison. So that coyote was able to separate the hide from the skeletal remains, and it drug that hide off into the woods.
amazing.
Can everyone see that video?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So did you say it dragged that off into the woods?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh
Wow.
my goodness me. That looks really heavy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, bison hide, the Indians have used it for years, and it's definitely warm.
Apparently,
wanted-
coyotes have too.
Wow.
Wow. Great video.
That's really cool.
That's amazing.
So at the end of the day, I saw a picture later from the next day where Charles Glasser was standing there right with us most of the day. And his last shot was there was 11 wolves lined up along the shoreline, and the bison is right there in front of the
In the
perfect
water.
in the water. It was an amazing picture.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go back to the here we go, PowerPoint. Okay. Can everyone see the full screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So this was Karen's shot again. So this, if you paid attention, or if you're on social media, and understand if you're not, and good for you. This went viral, it went everywhere, and these photos are Michael's photos. Because this was, I mean, I was standing with guides who'd said they'd been guiding for 15, 20 years, and they'd never seen anything like this before, and they never expected to see it again. And it felt like that for me, where being that close to watching a kill, and thank you to Kenny for letting us stay there for 8.5 hours, because I think some of us initially thought, well, how are we going to pee? Because we weren't even, there were no facilities, right? There were no facilities. This is Yellowstone in the winter. We were just on the edge of the Firehole River. Luckily we had some food in the snow coach, but we didn't plan to be there all day, but there was no way we were going to leave once we got there.
That's
and
right.
I don't know how everyone else here feels, but maybe you can talk about a little bit about how you know, when I came back and I was looking at my 6,000 photos, this is not something I'm going to witness again, I don't think.
Trip of a
Well,
lifetime.
I'm sorry, I wouldn't say that it's nothing we're going to witness again, or because we don't know what's going to be waiting for us on next year's trip. We might, I mean, true that the guide did say this was something they had never seen before, but that's the thing about Yellowstone in the winter, well, Yellowstone period, but Yellowstone in the winter, because everything's so much starker and sparser and less populated, you do get to see these incredible things. And while we might not get to see something quite like this next year, I am very, very hopeful that whoever decides to join us, we will see something fabulous.
I think we were all in awe and knew that it was something special.
And I would like to say one other thing about the TPC trip. I mean, we do hire a private coach, as opposed to just getting on a coach with a bunch of people who take you where they want to go. So, yeah, thanks, Kenny, for letting everybody stay there for as long as we wanted.
So I just wanted to briefly mention the books by Rick McIntyre. He's a long-term resident of the Yellowstone ecosystem, and he's written 3 or 4 books, I think 4. This one I've almost finished reading, and it is an absolute exquisite description of how the wolves re-established Yellowstone after they were reintroduced in 1995, and he covers the interactions between them and how they work together, and he spent hours and hours in the field documenting and watching how they play together and how they interact together. And I think to get a better understanding of wolves and to really understand how they work as animals, his writing is incredible. And I think, you know, Kenny mentioned before the incident that's happened recently. People are frightened of wolves, and I think that might be because they don't understand them. There's, you know, a lot of misinformation about they'll attack you and kill you. I've showed you already the statistics that show they don't do that. At least there hasn't been any recorded incidents in the Yellowstone National Park. So I encourage you to read these books if you're interested. I just want to finish off with something a little bit more lighter, because we did, this was, I mean, Karen was saying at the end, she sort of felt a bit overwhelmed and went and sat in the snow coach because it was, you know, nature is cruel and sometimes it's not that pleasant, but we did see some instances of nature just being fun. So I'm just going to show you this video of bison from Lamar Valley.
Has springs on his feet.
The bouncing.
So if you haven't been to Yellowstone in winter, they do make that noise in winter. I didn't put any sound effects on that. That's actually what they sound like. So
that video was like on the last night of the trip, we have a show where everybody submits images, and Rachel submitted this incredible video that had us in stitches. I think we for a very long time.
So anyway, here's Kenny. Here's a plug for Kenny, who's on this call. He's an awesome guide. We're so grateful to him for him letting us see the wolves, and here's how you can find him. And yeah, watch out for the email on May 1st, because 2025 is coming and you might want to go, and you never know what you'll see.
Rachel, this is Barney. And I'm sorry, I was on another call earlier. What were your temperatures like? Because I know we were really hurting for snow at that point, but
It was not very cold, but we did end up getting some snow, if I recall. Does anyone remember?
I think
Well-
the coldest we had was in the like 28 or something. It wasn't really, like I said,
Okay.
Nebraska was colder in March than Yellowstone was in January. for
Yeah,
me.
that's
Very
warm.
winter. I mean, compared with the trip 2 years previous to that one, which I was also on, where I thought I was going to lose a toe, this past year was much milder.
Yeah.
The day that we had the encounter with the wolves, it was unseasonably warm. And I want to say
Yeah.
it was, 28, 30 degrees for the most part of the day. And then we had some clouds move in about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So that made it much cooler for the remainder of the day. But overall, the second day was very nice.
Yeah.
Shockingly comfortable.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
So if anyone has any questions, we're open for questions about the trip in general or specific things about what happened that day.
I have a question real quickly. Did y'all actually see some of the wolves on your side of the river cross the river?
Yes, we didn't
Yes.
submit any of those photos. I kept waiting for someone else to submit, but we watched 8 of them cross the river and the mist was rising. So we all got some really magnificent photos of them just creeping through the mist on the river.
Oh,
Mm.
great.
It was funny, wasn't it, Nancy? Because the way that they crossed the river, they almost did it like cats a little bit. They sort
They
of
did.
picked up their paws and then they shook their paws, and they made sure they went to the shallowest part of the river so they didn't get very wet, and then they got to the other side and obviously shook themselves off like dogs, but they were very tentative the way they crossed the river.
Very, very. And it was really quite a surreal scene because the mist was coming up off the river and just incredible.
And I would say this back on Barney's question. If you do go on the trip though, be prepared for any kind of weather because we've
Yeah.
had -20 and blowing wind and other days where it was actually pleasant. So you never know.
I
That's
think
true.
that's very good advice. It could get very cold, and so you definitely need to be prepared for that.
I had to invest in a lot of warm things because we have very mild winters where I live. And I was really glad I did when I went to Nebraska. I took
Yeah,
all my
I-
Yellowstone stuff and used
We-
it.
-25 in Lamar Valley, right down at the base at the base station, 1 year, and it was 0 at the top of at the entry to the valley, and then once you got down in, it was -25. And the sun was out, and that helped a lot, but still, your feet got really cold if you didn't have even if you had good boots on.
Yeah.
So,
And if
yeah,
you have to practice using your camera with heavy gloves, you'll want to before you
Yeah.
go.
yeah.
We had friends that went like the week before we were there and it was 30 below. I was glad it wasn't 30 below when we were there.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have gotten as many wolf photos
No.
in that snow coach.
We
The other
would have
thing
all been in the
you-
snow coach with Karen.
The other thing you should be prepared for is that when you're in the snow coach, the windows are down. So you're not in a heated space because it's so your gear gets acclimated.
Mm.
So you're bundled up the whole time.
Yeah, we bought all these warm clothing to take with us and everything. We live in South Carolina, so you know how often we use that.
Well, I'm in North Carolina, so yeah, I don't,
Where?
mine, I keep mine out there. So, for you folks that were on the trip, any comments or anything that you'd like to see different or for us to maybe focus on, a little bit more?
Be aware of not eating breakfast at the hotel in Gardner.
Yes, that is something that Barney,
Oh, we forgot about that.
All right, so there's a story here. Come on, you guys got to spill it.
well, so we like to leave. We leave early, right? So that we can be. The hotel in Gardner is probably about a good 20-minute drive up into the park at least.
Yeah.
So I don't remember exactly what time sunrise was, but I think we left at about 6:30, was it, Rachel? And so we asked, they were supposed to have breakfast opened, the breakfast room, at 6. So at 5 to 6, we were all waiting outside. And we stood down at 6 o'clock and we all placed our order. And we're the only people there. And our waiter, let's say he looks like he had a very long night. And he writes down our order, and we're waiting and we're waiting and we're waiting and we're waiting. And it's like 6:25, I think. And he comes out and he says, I lost your order. Can I have your order again? And Rachel says, what do you mean you lost our order? You wrote it down. Go find it. And she says, I can't find where I wrote it.
He had
And
used someone else's notebook or something. He was, I think he was high.
And
I think he
I
was
think
high.
he was high.
This
More-
may be unrelated, but I think marijuana was legalized in Montana in the last 2 years. I don't know. It may be
Like
unrelated.
it.
Yeah, that's it.
It was 6 in the morning and he was definitely wasted. And then it transpired that he was the cook as well.
We couldn't even get coffee.
So we didn't get coffee. We landed up leaving at 6:30, having wasted a half hour. We didn't get breakfast. We grabbed some. Anyway, we do have a better solution. By the second morning, we had a better solution. So
So the
Was
grocery
the market
store,
open?
yes, the
market
market is open and they have everything you need.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I
that's
just
what
want
you,
to know if the guy that took the order invoked the dude word.
oh,
you know.
totally.
totally.
Man, he used man a lot. Oh man, this is just the way it is. No, man,
Yeah.
it's not.
Well, I just got to say that, everybody that put this thing together did a fantastic job, Karen and Rachel and, everybody, Michael. Yeah. I mean, we had a fantastic time.
We had a great group of
and
people.
Don't change anything. I mean, it was a lot of fun.
The really nice thing is that everybody is at their own level and everybody helps each other. If
Yeah.
you run into issues, and like Karin had an emergency with some batteries and we got that resolved, and it's so much different than going with a paid guide who's gonna like stand here, use this lens, whatever. And if people saw something, like we had someone on the trip who wanted to do landscapes, and if she saw something, we would stop and let her shoot that. So it's really, it's one of the best experiences I've ever had with a group.
Yeah, it
I
was
had
fun.
an observation about that, Nancy. When we were watching the wolves, there was a professional photographer there, and I overheard them say that they didn't have the right sandwich, or someone forgot to bring their sandwich or something. And I thought, dude, I said, dude, I was like, dude, come on. Look at where you are. I just,
Exactly.
well, did you get my peanut butter and jelly? Is that someone was like, oh, I'm sorry. I
That
forgot.
was Chaz.
I know.
that was
What was it? I didn't
Chaz.
want to say.
He lives in North Carolina.
I know.
We actually knew him.
I know you guys are friends with him. I didn't want to say his name, but I
Oh,
thought
yeah.
he was talking about his sandwich. I was like, oh, okay, sure. But
Well, but that also goes to price, right? This this trip is extremely well priced compared with professional trips that are doing it for profit, because it is just at a slight margin above cost in order to raise some money for the club, but very little. And so you're not going to get better value. You're going to pay at least double that if you go with a professional guide who does that for a
Double,
living.
maybe triple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a question, Marilyn, did you have a question?
Yes, it was for Kenny, and I don't know Kenny. And I wondered, I have been on the Yellowstone trip, but it's been maybe 3 years ago. And are you in Yellowstone all winter long?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, my question is, how often do you get to see wolves? How like in the winter? I know I've been there several times in the summer, but in the winter I saw them once, and I just wondered how often on a day-to-day basis.
Pretty
Question.
frequently. The Wapiti pack is the most popular pack to be photographed. And I think they're kind of almost acclimated to humans being nearby. And so they don't see us as a threat. And some of the pups, and the one that I think is Karen or some Nancy was calling Spike, I mean, it had approached us like a week or two before that happened on the roadway. Just surprisingly got within just a matter of feet of us, and they were curious about us. But in the Wapiti pack, what I've noticed is they make a big circle, from Mary Mountain, Firehole area, up north through Gibbon Meadow, over to Canyon, back down to Lamar Valley, and back over Mary Mountain. And so it was really kind of interesting. So it's just all timing. And I think that they're very predictable. And even though they're all over the map, they are the most predictable and most photographed wolf pack out of any of them in the park.
Cool. I love wolves. I'm just fascinated by them. I have
Yes.
that book already, Rachel. Haven't read it yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kenny, is the
So-
Junction Butte pack still the biggest pack, or is Wapiti bigger now?
I think Tower Junction's still kind of the largest pack right now. And
Okay.
the three wolves we lost, I think it was roughly about a week ago, were all collared. And I think they're from the Tower Junction pack. They lost their Paradise Valley.
Oh, do you mean they left the park and went into Paradise Valley?
Yeah, and they were killed.
Oh, okay.
So
Marilyn, I've got one question for you. Did you ever get through all of your 2,500 shots of the coyote jumping on the snow?
I think I did, and I don't think I got anything that I'm real happy with.
All right, so you gotta go back. And
Now, now I'm currently going through about 3.75 terabytes of Africa pictures.
Wow.
keep busy.
Yeah.
Jim and Cindy, are you part of CMPA?
Yes.
Yes, we are.
Good. Okay. Yeah, I'm up in the Triangle region.
We're in Charlotte,
Oh,
the
good.
Charlotte region.
So you're with. So do you know Charlotte?
Yes.
Yes, we
Yeah,
do.
okay. Yeah. Yeah. Good. Good. All right. Just trying to make all our connections.
Did you get to the meeting, the last meeting?
Yeah, because it's right in my backyard. Yeah.
Oh, well, I won, what was it called? Top of tier number in the second group.
That's a beautiful shot. Yeah, I actually had a wolf shot in there.
Yeah,
That took first place. Yeah, in
nice.
in tier 2.
Cindy, which one of your shots won top of tier?
It's Lake Mattamuskeet
Oh, it's
in
not a
North Carolina. It's not one of the ones. No, because you have to submit them. We had to submit them like in the fall.
Oh,
It's on the
okay.
wall if you want to carry
Yeah.
everything.
Rachel, it's an absolutely gorgeous shot. Absolutely fantastic. I mean, it's a real wall hanger.
Jim and Cindy have a story to tell about how expensive the trip was, because Karen said it's
Okay,
not very expensive, but Jim and Cindy, do you want to share?
that's my picture. Whoops, can you?
Oh, that one, I know that one. You showed that to me. That's
I think
cool.
I showed that to you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Karen, you know how Rachel was saying that mirrorless cameras are game changers?
Yes.
Well, Jim and I both bought mirrorless cameras when we came back.
So the trip is that cheap, basically.
Yeah, it was a really, really expensive trip. See, we paid the price of like a top tier photography trip.
Yeah.
Yeah, but she got a free camera with it. How
You
can
got a
you
free
argue with
camera,
that?
right?
That's funny. I bought the Sony mirrorless after the Teton trip also because the guy he was a guide also that was in our car and he shot, I just saw how fast the autofocus was and anyway.
Well,
So
I shot one of those eagle pictures like Jim shot, and my eyes were not crisp. But now with the new camera, that it locks right on the eye. It's beautiful.
Helpful.
Anything else from anybody or?
Kenny,
Go
can
ahead.
you just briefly fill us in about what's happening in Yellowstone right now? Can we get in to see the red dogs right now?
Yes, the west entrance is open. We can get from here to Old Faithful around to Canyon Village and up to Mammoth and Tower Junction and out to Lamar Valley from this entrance. Next weekend, they open Fishing Bridge, and I think shortly thereafter, they open the south entrance.
Wow. So have you seen any red dogs yet?
Oh, yes.
Oh, really? I have to go up there then.
So, yeah, definitely come up, give me a call, and, we can take a ride in there and see what else we can find.
Does
Cool.
everyone know what red dogs are? Everyone does, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I love red
Good
dogs.
mustard.
I have
They
a, I
make
have a
that
real-
boinging sound as well. Boing, boing.
I have a quick comment. Rachel mentioned that there's been no documented attacks of wolves on humans in Yellowstone. 8, 9, 10 years ago, there was a guy here in Jackson who gave a talk who actually works for Idaho Game and Fish. And well, this guy's okay. So he had a lot of facts and figures because there's a lot of myths about wolves. And in North America, at the time he gave that talk, there was one, maybe two documented evidences of wolves predating a human. And by that he meant they know wolves chewed on a dead person, but they had no proof that they actually attacked him. And that was in Canada, up in the Yukon. So the person could have died of frostbite or natural causes, and the wolves scavenged him. They don't think there's any documented evidence in North America of wolves actually attacking a human.
We actually have scientific proof. I mean, Nancy did allude to that, but I
Yeah.
saw she go down and I saw her flailing in the snow. And I saw Spiky thinking, well, I could cross the river and take my chance for the bison, or there's actually something to eat right in front of and he moved on to the bison.
Nancy, you should have done it for science, just for science, Come on.
I had so many clothes on. I'm sure I just looked at this big juicy thing.
A burrito.
I'll never forget the look I was getting from that wolf.
Well, one of
Just
the
as a side note, where you guys live over there, in Jackson, we still get the wildlife biologist reports every few weeks about what was sighted and what the elk count was and everything else. There's been documented about 30 wolves in the refuge this winter
yeah.
in the north end.
I saw one on Sunday, Jim. It ran in front of my car. A gray wolf ran in front of my car on Sunday. I freaked out. I didn't know what to do. I was like, camera, phone, which one? Oh, it's gone. Yeah.
Yeah, this was a pack, a 30
Right,
wolf
yeah.
pack in Jackson.
Yeah.
The Horsetail
Wow.
Creek Pack? Randy, is that the Horsetail Creek Pack?
They didn't give it a name.
They didn't tell us the name. I just got the numbers of different animals from
Yeah.
everything,
How many bison?
0 bison. Things like that.
30 wolves, did you say? Wow.
30.
Yeah,
Wow.
unfortunately they hang out in the area where you can't get to at all most of the time. But
Yeah.
I've actually been walking on the elk refuge in the winter and heard them howl when they're gathering up. And you can see that occasionally they get far enough south where you'll see some tracks and whatnot, but most of the time they stay far away from any point of entrance. It's like it's
Yeah,
so
I lived there for a while and I saw them walk past my house a lot. They're
Yeah.
definitely there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the other thing I will end this guy had a very interesting quote about. So you always heard about people who try to adopt wolves and it doesn't work out well, even though they are basically dogs.
Who adopt?
Well, oh, there's always somebody who thinks they need a wolf dog, but anyhow, this guy made the comment about there's only a gene or two difference between them and a domestic dog, but they want nothing to do with us. And if you try to domesticate them, they're a total disaster in a house as a dog. And he had this great quote from one guy who said, and he was trying to sum up why they're such a polarizing animal. And it said, the wolf refused to be our friend and we have never forgiven him for it.
Okay.
And he was an interesting guy. He actually said at one point the government hired him to trap him, shoot him. He actually shot him from helicopters. And then later in life, they told him to go to Canada and trap him and reintroduce him into Yellowstone. So he had a very wide range of comments and was very even.
What's his name? Can you send it to me later, David?
You know what? I'll have to go find his book.
Okay. It's not Rick McIntyre, is it? You're not thinking
No,
of the same.
it wasn't him. And this guy, I remember seeing a poster in town. He billed himself as the only person in the middle on the wolf debate. And I remember thinking, I'm in the middle. I'll go. There's two of us, and the unfortunate thing was after his talk, people just begin arguing over it again. And it's unfortunate. Nobody listens to facts. They just have their opinion and want to holler. And
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
I don't know if he changed anybody's opinions that night, but there were certainly some people there who were never going to change their opinion of anything. So yeah, but I mean, I'll see if I can find that. If I find it, I'll stick it on the Facebook page.
Right.
Idaho, the state where instead of saying wildlife crossing, the signs all say game crossing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also it's Idaho.
all I need
Fish
to
and
know about
Game.
Idaho.
It's fish and game, not game and fish, because they're more concerned with fish, but also they're just anyway.
Yeah.
I live in Idaho, so I can say what I want. They're not good people. Anyway.
So
Yeah.
Rachel, I put another video there, was taken a few days after we had our day.
Oh
But
yeah.
really kind of a neat little video. I followed the Wapiti pack up to Gibbon Meadows and
Okay, now you're just bragging.
then
Yeah.
the next morning, they'd taken down a bison in Gibbon Meadow. But it's really kind of neat. You see a bunch of them up there on the road.
I'm just downloading it, Kenny. So if anyone wants to hang around, it'll take like 20 seconds and you can watch it.
Sure.
So yeah, I'm just
I think we
downloading
can
it.
spare 20 seconds.
Yeah.
And we'll say, well, the last trip I was on, which was few years ago, we actually did also see a wolf pack harassing bison at Biscuit Basin.
That's right, we did with Chris
Yeah.
Burke. Yeah.
And if we hadn't been in such a hurry to go find them the next morning, they actually showed up at Old Faithful harassing a bison there, but we only discovered that after Rachel saw a video and we'd already left.
Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is Kenny's video. Oh my gosh.
Wow. Look at 'em all. Two.
They're spiky. I can see them.
Yeah. So we followed them for probably about 2 hours, and then
My
right
goodness.
before Gibbon Falls, we got ahead of them, and we stayed ahead of them the rest of the day, and would capture them coming up around corners in different spots. But the next morning they took down a bison there at Gibbon Meadow.
They took down a bison.
Yes.
Was it sick?
I don't know. I didn't know the bison before they took it down. So
Oh, okay. But because I just thinking of the what we witnessed, and
yeah, it's totally different. I mean, there was probably about 250 head of bison out in Gibbon Meadow at that time. And so I just think they took random one, probably
wow.
one of the elders or something a little young, but took out a full bison. In the
Kenny,
back.
Kenny, that first,
when you got out ahead of the pack and they were coming up towards you, did they just kind of go off into the woods to get around you, or what? How was their interaction with you and the snow coach?
They would just come straight up at us. They didn't dive off the road. Now, if somebody came up behind them, they would dive off till they go by, and they would come back up on the road. But once we got past them, we would just stay far enough ahead to get snapshots, and then we kind of keep moving because we knew where they were headed. Because it's like I was explaining earlier, it's like clockwork. They start from Old Faithful, Mary Mountain, Biscuit Basin area. They go north, then they go across the Canyon Village out to Lamar Valley, and then they come back over Mary Mountain Trail.
How many's
Wow.
in the
What a
Wapiti
treat.
now, Kenny? Do you know?
I think there's 14.
Wow.
And so do you have video of them walking toward you?
I have more stills of them walking. I was driving the van whenever we were taking this video.
That's what I thought.
I've got
It's like driver's angle, right?
I've got a ton of
Butt
stills.
shot.
Yeah. Got a lot of stills of them coming right up to us. At one point, they walked right up to the van. And we, and Spikey was right outside the driver's door, just kind of looking up at me. And yeah,
Oh my gosh.
so we just kind of put it in reverse and got down the road away so we could turn around and stay ahead of them.
Oh my gosh. So
No.
did
Anyone
you,
else? Was anyone else there for this one?
I had a group of photographers, another photo company.
No, but I mean, was there other snow coaches, or was it just you guys?
Oh, it was just us.
Wow.
Yeah.
There you go. You can have a better experience than we had.
that's incredible, Kenny. Thank you for sharing that. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
thank you.
Kenny, that first day when we went into the park, there was a bison way off in a field under a tree that was kind of hurting, and we were wondering if they were gonna, if this was before we saw the other wolves. But whatever happened to that guy?
Well, funny you should mention that because that guy disappeared after these wolves got up to Gibbon Meadow. So I have a
Oh.
hunch that was the low hanging fruit. Yeah.
Oh,
So, and it was crippled because I'd seen it, going up there a couple weeks before that. It was kind of crippled up. It had real bad right hip pain or something bothering in its hip. It could just barely get around.
Yeah, I remember we thought it was dead. Then it moved.
Exactly.
yeah.
Right. Yeah. I was wondering what happened. We were so involved with the big pack the next day. I forgot about that guy.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much.
All right.
Yeah, this has been great.
Thanks everybody for coming and attending. If nothing else, we'll sign off and make sure you check your emails, and if you're not getting anything about the Yellowstone trip tomorrow, the next day, maybe check your junk mail. So
thanks to everyone, and especially thanks to Kenny for taking us on this trip. Awesome trip, Kenny. We love you.
Yeah.
You're the best guide ever.
Look forward to next year.
Absolutely.
So, and David or whoever's doing the planning, reach out. And I know there were some problems with the lodging inside the park. I think I can probably do a workaround so we can make that happen. And you know, we'll have another great year.
Oh, that's great if we could work that out, because
Yeah.
we always enjoyed staying at the Snow Lodge.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great experience.
Yeah, and yeah, we're totally at a loss of why that couldn't happen, but yeah, corporate decisions are sometimes
Yeah.
made by idiots.
We'll work around everything.
Yes, all right. Well, thanks a lot. So,
You bet.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah,
Rachel,
thank you. Thanks
Great
for
to
putting
see
this
everyone.
Good
together.
to see you, Marilyn. I miss you, Marilyn.
Good to see everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.